If you had told me a month ago that a single Uber ride would completely upend my life, I would have laughed and gone back to editing videos in my bedroom. I wasn't exactly living a thrilling life. Just a regular 26-year-old guy with a freelance job, a cat that hated everyone, and a tendency to avoid anything remotely emotional. But that night, that one ride, started something I never expected. I had just left a friend's birthday party early. I wasn't feeling it. The music was too loud, the drinks too warm, and I was tired of forcing smiles. I pulled out my phone, ordered an Uber, and waited outside on the curb, scrolling mindlessly through Instagram. A few minutes later, a black Toyota pulled up. The driver's name was Jake. I barely glanced up as I opened the door and slid into the back seat, mumbling a quick, "Hey." "You Alex?" the driver asked, turning slightly. That voice made me look up. He was not what I expected. Jake had this low, calm voice that cut through the background noise in my head. He looked mid-30s, with a strong jawline, stubble that looked more intentional than lazy, and eyes that flicked up to the rearview mirror with a kind of quiet curiosity. "Yeah," I said. "That's me." He nodded and pulled back onto the street. The car smelled like mint and leather, his music low and mostly instrumental, something jazzy, mellow. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the city lights streaming in through the window. I was exhausted, head resting against the glass, half zoned out, when he spoke again. "Rough night?" I opened one eye. "That obvious?" He gave a small laugh. "I pick up a lot of people from bars and parties. You've got the quiet kind of drained energy. Like someone who didn't want to be there." I didn't respond right away. That was pretty accurate. He didn't push, just kept driving. But something about his voice, the way he noticed things, little things, made me want to talk. So I did. I found myself telling him that I just felt out of place, that I wasn't really close to anyone at the party anymore, that I'd been feeling kind of detached lately. It wasn't dramatic or oversharing. It just came out naturally, like I was talking to someone who wouldn't judge me because he didn't know me. Jake listened. He didn't interrupt. Didn't try to make it about himself. Just nodded occasionally, kept his eyes on the road, and let me speak. It was weirdly comforting. When we finally pulled up in front of my apartment building, I didn't want to get out. "This is you," he said gently. I hesitated. "Thanks for the ride, and for listening." He smiled. "Anytime." And then I did something I normally wouldn't do. I looked up at him and said, "You do this often? Drive at night?" "Yeah," he said. "I like the quiet ones. People who aren't just drunk or yelling at their ex over the phone." "Cool," I said, then blurted, "You want to come up for coffee or something?" He looked at me through the mirror for a beat too long. I regretted it immediately. But then he said, "Sure, I could use a break." The elevator ride up to my apartment was silent, but not uncomfortable. Jake stood next to me, hands in the pockets of his hoodie, glancing at the numbers as they lit up one by one. I stole a look at him out of the corner of my eye. He had that quiet confidence some guys carry naturally, like nothing could rattle him. It was intimidating in the kind of way that makes you want to impress someone without knowing why. Inside, my apartment was small and dimly lit, the way I liked it. Cozy, I called it. Cramped, others might say. I dropped my keys in the dish near the door and turned on the kitchen light. "Make yourself at home," I said, instantly regretting how cliché it sounded. Jake gave a short nod and wandered over to the window, looking out at the streetlights below. "Nice view." I opened a cabinet and pulled down 2 mismatched mugs. "I've got coffee, tea, or some really questionable whiskey." He chuckled. "Coffee's fine. Black." I started the kettle. The silence filled with the low hum of the city outside and the occasional creak of old pipes. I didn't know what I expected from him being here. Maybe just a simple cup of coffee and some more quiet conversation before he left. Or maybe I was hoping for something more, even if I didn't want to admit it. Jake stayed by the window, leaning against the frame, arms crossed over his chest. He looked relaxed, but I could see his eyes scanning the room, noticing everything. The cat tower in the corner. The empty pizza box on the counter. My worn-out hoodie hanging off a chair. "You live alone?" he asked. "Yeah. Had a roommate once, but he got a job across the country. Haven't replaced him." He nodded, like he understood the kind of silence that can settle into a space once someone else is gone. "You always invite strangers up for coffee?" I smirked, pouring the hot water over the grounds. "Only when they rescue me from awkward birthday parties." He smiled, slow and genuine. It softened something in his face, made him look less like a guy who'd seen too much of the world, and more like someone who might actually be just as lost as me. I handed him his mug and leaned against the counter. "So, Jake, the Uber driver, what's your story?" He sipped his coffee before answering. "Dropped out of grad school. Thought I wanted to be a therapist. Turns out, I hated every second of sitting in a windowless office listening to other people's problems while mine kept stacking up." I raised an eyebrow. "That's honest," he shrugged. "Driving lets me think, and sometimes not think. Depends on the night." We talked about nothing and everything. About our worst jobs. About childhood friends we'd lost touch with. About how the city could feel too small and too big all at once. Hours slipped by unnoticed. At one point, I realized we were both sitting on the couch, legs stretched out, mugs empty. It was nearly 3 a.m. Jake looked at me then, really looked, and something shifted. Not in a dramatic movie scene way, but in a quiet, electric way, like the first spark before a fire catches. He tilted his head slightly. "Do you always talk this much with strangers?" I chuckled. "Only when they sit on my couch until 3 in the morning." He smiled, but there was a flicker in his eyes now, like maybe he was weighing something. Maybe a question he didn't know how to ask. I was the one who moved first. I don't know what possessed me to do it. Maybe it was the late hour. Maybe it was the coffee. Maybe it was the way he was looking at me, like I was something more than a one-night passenger. I reached out, just to brush his hand with mine, just a test. He didn't pull away. He didn't say anything either, just looked at our hands. Then he slowly turned his palm over, letting mine rest in his. Warm, solid, quiet. The city outside was still buzzing, but in that moment, my apartment was impossibly still. "You don't have to," I whispered, unsure of what I was even offering. Jake's thumb brushed across the back of my hand. "I know," he said quietly, "but I want to." The way Jake said, "but I want to," felt like it echoed through my whole body. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he looked at me when he said them, like he had already made up his mind long before the moment arrived. Like he was just waiting for me to say it was okay. I didn't respond, not with words. I just shifted a little closer to him on the couch, barely a few inches. But that tiny distance felt like a bridge, and once I crossed it, everything changed. Jake's hand was still in mine, his fingers now loosely laced through mine. His touch wasn't nervous or hesitant. It was calm, deliberate. He looked at me like he was still trying to figure something out, like I was a puzzle he hadn't solved yet. Then, quietly, he said, "I didn't expect this when I picked you up tonight." "Neither did I replied, almost too quickly. He gave this small laugh, not mocking, more like he was amused by how unpredictable life can be. His thumb kept moving in slow circles over my skin. I couldn't look away from him. "You sure?" he asked softly. I nodded, maybe a little too fast. Yeah, that was all he needed. Jake leaned in, not fast, not dramatic. Just a gentle shift forward, the kind that gives you time to back away if you want to. But I didn't move, I didn't even breathe. His lips brushed mine like he was testing the idea of it first, then pressed more fully. It wasn't some wild, desperate kiss. It was quiet, warm, real, and it completely knocked the breath out of me. I kissed him back, instinctively. Slowly. Like I wanted to take my time figuring out what he tasted like, how he felt. When we pulled apart, neither of us said anything right away. He looked at me, eyes softer now, the usual guarded expression gone. "You're not like the people I usually meet," he said. "Is that a good thing?" He nodded. "Yeah, it is." We stayed like that for a while, sitting close, our shoulders touching, the occasional brush of fingers or knee. It wasn't even about the kiss anymore. It was the weird comfort of having someone next to you who didn't want to fill the silence with noise, who wasn't trying to impress you or prove something. Eventually, he leaned back and ran a hand through his hair. "I should probably go. I've got an early morning." Part of me wanted to say, "Stay," but I also didn't want to ruin whatever had just happened with the wrong move. Instead, I walked him to the door. He hesitated there, glancing down the hallway, then back at me. "Mind if I text you sometime? Maybe we grab coffee again when you're not inviting strange men into your apartment." I smiled. "Only if you promise not to analyze me like a dropout therapist." "No promises," he said, smirking. He leaned in again, kissed me one more time, short, sweet, certain, then walked down the hall. When the door clicked shut behind him, I just stood there, staring at it, like if I waited long enough he might come back. The apartment felt different now, like it wasn't just mine anymore. The next few days felt like I'd stepped out of my life and into someone else's. I went through the motions, emails, client meetings, editing deadlines, but my brain kept looping back to Jake. The way he said my name, the way his thumb traced circles into my skin like he was memorizing the shape of my hand. I couldn't stop thinking about him. And the weird part, it wasn't even the kiss that haunted me most. It was the way he listened. The way he sat still, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he didn't need to fill the silence. He texted the next afternoon. Just a simple, "Still thinking about your couch." I stared at it for way too long before typing back. "It's still here, still uncomfortable. You're welcome to come test it again." He replied with a laughing emoji and, "Tempting. How's Friday?" We made plans, low key, just coffee again. But it felt like something more. The anticipation buzzed in my chest like I was 17 and sneaking out for a first date. And when Friday came, I cleaned my apartment like I was expecting royalty. Even scrubbed the bathroom sink, which says a lot. Jake arrived right on time, wearing a dark denim jacket and a beanie, which only made him look more annoyingly attractive. He stepped inside, smiled like he hadn't just knocked the air out of my lungs, and said, "You look better than you did in the back of my car." I rolled my eyes. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week. This time, he didn't sit at the edge of the couch like before. He sat close, thigh to thigh, like he belonged there now. We drank coffee, talked about nothing again. He told me about a passenger who had tried to bring a snake in a shoebox into his back seat. I told him about a client who sent me 37 edits and still asked for a grungier but cleaner vibe. Eventually, our mugs were empty again, and we were sitting in silence. A comfortable one. Then he asked, "You always this guarded?" That caught me off guard. I turned to him. "I'm not guarded." Jake raised an eyebrow. I sighed. "Okay, maybe a little." He nodded slowly. "I'm not trying to rush anything. I just want to know what this is. Between us." I was quiet for a second too long, then said, "I don't know yet, but I want to find out." His expression softened. Jake leaned in, and this time the kiss came easier. No hesitation, no testing the waters. Just a slow, certain kind of kiss that felt like an answer. We didn't take it further. Not that night. He stayed until just after midnight, curled beside me on the couch, my head resting against his shoulder as we watched an old movie neither of us paid attention to. When he left, he kissed me on the forehead like we'd been doing this for months, and I stood at the door again, wondering how someone I didn't know a week ago now felt like someone I didn't want to go a day without. The thing about starting something new, especially when it sneaks up on you, is that it doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it slips in quietly, like sunlight bleeding through the blinds when you weren't expecting morning yet. That's how it felt with Jake. We didn't label anything. There was no DTR talk. But we fell into this rhythm. He'd text me after late shifts, tell me about the people he picked up, drunk couples fighting, quiet teens going home from night shifts, lonely regulars who always sat in the same seat. I'd tell him about color palettes and crazy clients who wanted things edgy but warm. It became a thing. He came over a few times a week. We didn't make plans, really. Sometimes he'd show up with takeout. Sometimes he'd come in, steal half my fries, and fall asleep on the couch while I finished editing. Sometimes we wouldn't even kiss. Just sit near each other and exist. And that felt more intimate than anything. One Tuesday night, he showed up unexpectedly. I opened the door in sweats, assuming it was a package. But there he was, holding a bag from our favorite taco place, looking tired but happy to see me. "Rough night?" I asked. "Not anymore," he said, stepping inside. We ate on the floor, because why not? I had a record on low in the background, something lo-fi and slow. Jake leaned back on his elbows, chewing thoughtfully, then said, "My mom used to say people fall in love in the quiet moments, the in-between ones." I blinked at him, taco halfway to my mouth. "That's weirdly poetic." "She was into stuff like that," he said. "Poetry, stars, feelings." I smiled. "Sounds like someone I'd get along with." "You would've. She'd have liked you." Something about the way he said that, so soft, so certain, made my stomach flutter. He didn't say anything more, just reached over and took my hand, squeezing it once, like a silent conversation we didn't need to translate. That night, he didn't go home. It wasn't planned. We just ended up tangled together on the couch, both too full and too lazy to move. Eventually, I turned the lights off and pulled a blanket over us. He curled against me, one arm slung over my waist like it belonged there. I lay awake longer than I should have, heart pounding at the quiet closeness of it. He was warm and steady beside me, breathing soft and even. In the dark, I whispered, "Jake?" He answered, already half asleep. "I'm not guarded with you, not really." He shifted slightly, his face now pressed against the side of my neck. "I know," he murmured. "That's why I'm still here." The first time we argued, it wasn't even about anything big. It was a Thursday. I was stressed over a delayed project, a missed invoice, and a broken plugin that crashed my editing software. Jake had come over late after a shift, tired and quieter than usual. He walked in, dropped his keys a little too hard on the counter, and muttered something about a drunk guy puking in his back seat. I barely looked up from my laptop. "Can you close the door softer next time?" He paused mid-step. "Sorry, it's just loud," I said, not even thinking. "And I've been trying to concentrate all day." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Okay. Didn't realize I needed a noise warning before entering." I shut my laptop with more force than necessary. "I'm not asking for a lot. Just maybe try not to slam things around." He stared at me, then gave a dry laugh. "Wow. Great to be here." I winced. "Look, I'm just..." "No, I get it." He cut in, stepping back. "You're overwhelmed, and now I'm one more thing in your space." His words hit harder than they should have. "That's not what I meant," I said quickly. "You're not a thing. I'm just... God, today was brutal, and I guess I took it out on you. I'm sorry." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded, tension softening slightly. "Okay." Silence stretched between us, the kind that didn't feel comfortable this time. I stood, walked over, and gently touched his wrist. "I've never done this before, Jake." He looked confused. "What? Fought with someone?" "No. This," I gestured between us. "Letting someone in. Like, actually in. I don't always know how to be open." Jake's shoulders dropped, his posture less defensive now. "Yeah, I can tell." I swallowed. "But I want to. With you." He stared at me, then gave a small smile. "I don't need you to be perfect, just honest." That night, we didn't kiss. We didn't sleep tangled up or fall asleep mid-movie. We lay in bed facing each other, his hand resting over mine, our words stripped down and quieter than usual. It was the night I realized love doesn't always show up wrapped in warmth and ease. Sometimes it shows up as the person who stays, even when it's a little messy. A week after that night, we were standing in the cereal aisle at the store when Jake said something that made me freeze. "Would you ever move in with someone?" he asked, casually examining a box of Honey Bunches of Oats. I blinked at him. "You mean like, hypothetically?" He shrugged like it wasn't a loaded question. "Yeah, or not." I looked at him, really looked, and saw something in his face that made my stomach twist. Hope, maybe, or fear, or both. "I don't know," I said truthfully. "I've always liked having my own space, but I also don't hate when you're in it." He smirked, setting the box into the cart. "Romantic." I nudged his shoulder. "Shut up." But later, at home, the question stuck with me. Would I move in with Jake? Would we be the kind of couple who grocery shop together, who argued about what side the toothpaste belongs on, who made dumb inside jokes about frozen peas and Netflix passwords? The thought didn't scare me, not like it would have a month ago. One night, after we'd both had too many drinks at my friend's rooftop party, we stumbled back into my apartment laughing. He sat on my bed, pulling off his boots while I fumbled with the light. "I can't believe you told them I'm the emotionally mature one," Jake teased. I collapsed beside him, grinning. "You are." He looked over at me, expression unreadable now. "You mean that?" I sobered slightly. "Yeah, you're the one who slows things down, makes me stop spiraling. You ground me." He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "I don't think anyone's ever said that to me." I turned my body toward him. Then those people didn't know what they had. Jake didn't say anything, just leaned in and kissed me. Longer, deeper, softer than any kiss before it. Like he was saying something he couldn't quite get out with words. That night, for the first time, we slept with no space between us. His leg over mine, my face tucked under his chin. It felt stupidly safe. But the morning after was quieter. Not awkward, just cautious. Like something had shifted, and we were both afraid of naming it out loud. He kissed my forehead before leaving, murmured, "See you tonight," and I stood there in my kitchen, coffee in hand, wondering if we'd finally crossed into something more permanent, something more terrifying, something real. It happened on a Sunday, the kind of gray, quiet day where the city felt half asleep and the rain tapped soft rhythms against the windows. Jake came over with 2 coffees and a bag of croissants, wearing one of my hoodies like it belonged to him. "I was in the neighborhood," he said with a smirk, even though I knew he'd driven 20 minutes out of his way. We spent the morning like we often did, half watching some documentary, half curled into each other on the couch. His leg over mine, my hand resting absent-mindedly on his thigh. No need to speak, but at some point, I must have dozed off, because when I blinked awake, Jake was just staring at me. "What?" I asked, voice raspy. He shook his head, almost smiling. "Nothing." "Don't do that. You're doing the stare thing again." He didn't laugh like I expected him to. Instead, he said, "You make me feel still, like I don't have to be anyone else." I sat up a little. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Jake leaned forward, resting his forehead against mine. "I think I'm falling in love with you." There it was. No build-up, no dramatic music. Just those words, right there between us, like a match struck in the dark. I didn't panic. For once, I didn't retreat into myself. I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I think I am too." We didn't say anything for a long time after that. Just sat there, foreheads pressed together, breathing in the moment. Later, when he was gathering his things to leave, because he had a shift and real life still existed, I followed him to the door. He hesitated, hand on the knob. "Do you want to come stay with me tonight?" I blinked. "At your place?" He nodded. "You haven't seen it yet. Figured it's time." There was something in his voice, quiet but firm, like this wasn't just an invitation. It was a turning point. I smiled. "Yeah, I want that." He grinned, kissed me quick and warm, then opened the door. Before he stepped out, I stopped him. "Hey, Jake," he turned. "The answer to your question, about moving in with someone?" I said, heart thudding in my chest. "Ask me again in a couple months." He laughed. "All right, I will." And then he left. But this time, the door didn't feel like a goodbye. It felt like the start of everything else.